Why networking is good for the business. Hey, I'm Donnie Bovine, the CEO and founder of Success Champion Networking and author of Fuck to Focus. This is Growth Mode, a show all about growing and scaling your business. Hanging out with me, as always, is the sales and automated introverted badass, Kevin Snow. And this episode, we are going to dial into why networking is actually a solid thing for your business. I was thinking about a story to tell as I was dialing into this, and I remembered, my first client I picked up when I first started doing sales training. I heard about a ribbon, or not a ribbon cutting, but an open house for my number one competitor I had when I was doing commercial printing. Selling commercial printing in the Fort Worth, Texas area. I was one of the top, printing reps here. And there was one company that I always battled it out and seemed to duke it out with on some really big accounts and deals, to the point where one of their salespeople at one point called my company up and asked me to quit going after certain accounts because I kept taking business. And when I got into sales training and I learned that competitor was doing this kind of open house and showing people their equipment, I immediately signed up to go. And it was fun going through their open house because I'd never actually been in their facility. I was now no longer a competitor, so it made it a lot simpler to go through and see all their equipments, their layouts, their shop and everything. And I had a lot of fun kind of geeking out on the presses, the equipment, and I mean, I knew a lot of the things that were happening. And when we get to the end, the vice president of sales looks at me. He goes, "Man, you sure know a lot about printing." And I explained, hey, I came from that industry. And he asked me what I do now, and I said, now I'm a sales training, company, and I'm teaching a lot of sales training. And I just quickly mentioned that we had a workshop coming up here in the near future. And he instantly said, "Man, I love that sales training type stuff." He's like, "I love that motivational type stuff. I love being around it." He goes, "How do I get a part of it? How can I come see what you guys do?" And I told him about the workshop, and he ended up coming out. That dude is still one of my greatest friends, a good buddy. He was a client with me with that company. So yeah, my first client doing sales training was my biggest competitor when I sold commercial printing. But he became a great friend, family friend. We did family trips together and all kinds of stuff. And we still stay in touch over the years. And for me, it was one of the coolest moments to learn the power of networking, because had I not gone out there to that open house to network, to meet people, we would have never brought that account in, because I don't know that I would have got in from a straight cold once they understood who I was, from my previous career, kicking their butt from a sales perspective, man. So networking is an absolute game changer when you deploy it as part of your business. So how do we tackle this one, Kevin? Why networking is good for the business?
So I think when everyone reads the title, why networking is good for your business, they're automatically going to say, well, duh, because it's going to generate revenue and fill your pipeline. Yes, that is the super easy answer to that question. But I think there's a ton of stuff that we can talk about that doesn't necessarily involve just the revenue piece, while all those benefits are going to eventually lead to revenue. Like the first thing that pops out of me, or pops out to me, doesn't pop out of me, it pops out to me.
All of a sudden we got this alien moment. There's something popping out of your fucking chest.
So the first thing that really stood out to me, it was a benefit for me when I started doing a ton of networking, was I learned a ton about all these other industries.
Oh, true.
And I understood, because I'd hear every week that who they were looking to meet for potential clients and who they wanted to work with and how they were helping people, that when other reps in my office would be asking questions about stuff, I'd like, oh, well, think about this and that and this. And they're like, how do you know this? I'm like, because they talk about it every week. I understand what, they're actually talking about what their issues are and who they're trying to meet and who they need. So I had this view into their industries that most people didn't. So I think that educational piece is so huge for a salesperson.
Yeah, I agree with that. In addition to the education side of things, I think the ability to get into multiple different conversations with different personality types is huge as well, because I think small talk was not a thing that I was good at, and I still struggle with it in certain arenas because I always want to talk business, and when people start talking about other things, I really struggle with that conversation. So networking got me into situations where I could talk business, and it was okay. Like, people expected you to talk business, and it wasn't the how's the weather or what's the Cowboys doing, or things that I literally didn't give a shit about, which really hit my high D personality, So going out and being able to interact with people under the guise that a business conversation should be happening allowed me to learn to navigate a whole bunch of different conversational styles. And yeah, I will say that I heard enough about like the Cowboys or the Rangers or other stupid shit that I was able to carry on a intellectual conversation with people when they started talking about those things, which by the way really helped when the Texas Rangers became a client of mine doing sales trading. I knew enough about the damn team that I sounded I didn't sound like a complete damn moron, when I was talking to them through the sales process. And so I think being able to learn, and I think whether you're extrovert or introvert, it gives you a chance to jump into conversations you likely wouldn't have gotten into had you not have been out networking and meeting new people.
Yeah, I agree. That's really key. And it's funny, I was at an event, and this is probably a year or so ago, maybe, or pre COVID. I can't remember. Everything kind of flows together now in my memory. But I was at an event, and I asked someone what they did, and they chastised me for having bad manners.
Wait,
I'm like, what?
how is that bad manners?
Evidently, evidently, they were brought up where you aren't supposed to talk about what people do for a job, and it's inappropriate to ask them what their work is. I'm like, where the hell did you grow up? Because you know I'm like, I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I've never had anyone mad when I say, "Hey, so what do you do for a living?" To find out about who they are. That's
Did you
usually
ask her what the
pretty
fuck you were
safe
supposed to
work.
ask her?
Yeah, I was supposed to talk about like all the unimportant crap.
Yeah, I ain't got time for that.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell? And I asked other people, and like, is this a Southern thing? Because they were from the South. I'm like, is this a hillbilly thing? Where does this come from? And no one could really understand where that was, what that came from. So I'm like,
Blows me away.
obviously, yeah, I never got dug deeper. I'm like, so obviously they were embarrassed about what they did and just needed an excuse to not announce that to the world. So
That's
I'm like,
crazy.
all right, whatever.
Another thing I think, yeah, that's crazy, man. Another thing I think networking did for me is it got me into conversations with powerful people that I was intimidated by, because I found myself in the rooms with them. And I found myself in situations where I had to talk to them. If you guys probably, if you listen to the show at all, have heard me talk about, I struggled early on with the old gray haired dudes because my grandfather and my uncle were such dicks. So when I got around these CEOs of these big companies and stuff, there was an intimidation factor there. And networking put me in the rooms where these people were, and I had to interact. And because I mean, if somebody says hi, you kind of have to say hello back. You can't just uh, turn around and walk away. I mean, I guess you could, but
Well, you can.
you know. So, but it allowed me to get more comfortable and get more opportunities to speak with these people. And the more and more I spoke to them, I realized that a lot of them, were just intimidated by the situation as I was, which was always an interesting find for me. When you can sit across from a mayor, a judge, a city council member, and realize they're introverted as fuck. They don't want to be out in public. They're struggling to talk to people. It made it a lot more fun for me to go get more of these conversations, because if we could find a common ground, it really opened up some unique conversations and doors, and you rescued people a lot of times.
Oh yeah, And I think the act of networking, you kind of touched on it a little bit when you use the words you get more comfortable having those conversations. I think the actual act of networking and being out in a group, whether it's at like a trade show or an actual networking event, has the ability to help people get more comfortable being in those situations, especially if you are that little bit more on the introverted side and being the center of attention is not your favorite activity. you know Having to actually go to these events and figure out, all right, so how do I actually not have this be a waste of my time? How do I actually get results from this? How do I get in front of the right people is key. The trade shows were big for me as a sales guy because now it was my job. I had to go out and initiate conversations and get people to come into the booth. So, I could just fall back on well, I have to do it. It's the mission. I have to get it done. Whereas actual networking events where it's more casual and conversational, it was too easy to not get involved and just kind of hang back on the outside. So, but you have to do that stuff. And those activities are a great way to start to feel comfortable in those situations.
Yeah, and I'm gonna, because it just popped in my head. I agree with all that. The virtual networking for me has allowed me to do something that I just love doing, and it's commanding a room. And I'll go to a lot of other networking things that aren't Success Champion networking involved, and there's a lot of shitty networking out there. A lot of, I mean, I went to one shit about a month ago, and you showed up and they said, okay, we're just going to put you in breakout rooms. Didn't give you any directions, didn't give you anything to say, anything to talk about. They just said go, which worked fine for me. But you could see when we jumped in the room, a lot of people were very, very confused about what they were supposed to do. So me being me, I just took the fuck over every time and said, all right, let's do this. Who the fuck are you?
Shocking.
Who are you looking for, right? Right, but for me, it puts me in my element because I can control a room. Now I had people tell me that I intimidate the shit out of them and I become unapproachable at that type, and I'm like, my people show the fuck up. Oh, I'm okay with it, But I think virtual networking, in particular, has allowed me to meet people from all over the fucking world and get in conversations with people from all walks of life, which before, when I was just doing in persons in Fort Worth, Texas, I was limited to who I was meeting because, back then LinkedIn was just a damn resume platform. Nobody thought about doing business on Facebook, so it was traditional selling and traditional networking. And I think, virtual networking has just opened up a tremendous amount of opportunity. And I laugh every time somebody looks at Kevin and I and go, well, why would I want to meet somebody in another state? I can only do business here. Why would I, meet somebody in another country? And it blows me away, man. You have no fucking clue who knows who and who knows them where.
Yeah. And that's the cool part about networking. If you're doing it right and not being the douchey sales guy that's just trying to pitch at every time you get in a conversation. Here's my card and here's my flyer. We sell this. You can have some really cool conversations and learn some really cool stuff about people and create these really unique connections with people that last. And they aren't just, when your connection is solely based on business, it's really hard to keep that relationship going for an extended period of time, especially if you are transactional product-based sales. Once that sale is done, now where is the relationship? Now what do you do with it?
Yep.
But actually getting to know the people is so super important. And it opens you up to now have access to people who can be a mentor.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the big advantages of networking is now you can surround yourself with your peers and people who are actually a little bit ahead of you in their development who can say, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. That happened to me too, and it sucked. Here's what we did. And they can actually help guide you through those the issues and challenges that you face as a business owner faster. So you don't have to do all the trials and tribulations to fix stuff. They can be like, yeah, you need to go do this. Oh, dude, awesome. That was exactly what we needed.
That's such a valid point. I didn't even think about it. And as you were talking, I just thought about a lot of the business mentors and people that were bigger in business and companies and the likes that I sought out advice from, and sometimes solicited, sometimes unsolicited. There was a awesome gentleman in the home builders association that I was sat on the board from, that notoriously, without anybody seeing, would pull me aside and gently, not really, tell me how I was fucking up during the board meetings and things I could do to adjust. And he was doing it in such of a cool, respectful manner. And part of it, I didn't know any better. Part of it, I didn't give a shit. So, but he taught me quite a bit about how I should interact in different scenarios. And I think that's a huge point to the mentorship side of things, is because you're getting access to people that you likely wouldn't get access to without networking, then you will find yourself in cool situations. I mean, that's why I love sitting on private boards, and I like sitting on nonprofit boards and the likes, because the people that sit on those boards are there for a mission, right? They're there to help the nonprofit out. And so uh, you automatically had this kind of common ground of,
Mhm.
how did you get a part of this? Why did you get involved with this to help that conversation? And I've got a couple of friends that from the nonprofit world that have even gone on to huge monstrous things that I'm still great friends with. And it's cool to know that we became friends just because we were sitting on a nonprofit board together.
Yeah, well, and you have a couple that you sat on boards and actually founded some nonprofits with that we're still able to go to and say, "Hey, we need your help with this," and
Yep.
they're like, "I'm in.
Yep.
What do we do? How do we partner and how do we make this work?" And it's really awesome. And we've still got the mostly through you, but now I'm getting involved with those too, where we're at, yeah, when we're at the point we're totally buying a table for 25 grand, we're
Yeah.
totally doing this thing because of the relationships that are out there. So don't look at networking just as a, hey, here's how I fill my pipeline, here's where I find my next new client. It's like, hey, here's how I build some really badass relationships that are going to serve me the rest of my life.
Yeah. I mean, just as another funny one, and it's so funny because uh, that when I, number one competitor that was my first client doing sales training, my wife and I drove by that area just to, their building's gone. So they sold off the land, demolished the building, they've moved locations, and there's no sign out front. When you see construction that there's no sign out front, you're like pissed because you want to know what's being built there. I immediately text my buddy Chuck, and I'm like, "Hey," and now Chuck was a guy that helped me launch one of my nonprofits that we'd launched back in the day, and now I think he's the president of Fort Worth South, this whole area of all these businesses. Chuck and I are great friends, and I sent him a message, and I said, "Hey, what's going up where such and such got tore down?" And he instantly replied back, "Apartments, fucking apartments." But I wouldn't have been able to have that relationship to reach out to somebody to figure out what was being built there, had I not been networking for years and building these relationships. And I think the other part maybe we're kind of talking about, but more specifically, is you have no clue where somebody's going to pop up in your life later. A lot of networking is to build your network and to leverage it in a respectful manner, that you never burn the bridges. You always build a relationship, because people are going to show up in different aspects of your life, and you have no idea when you may need that exact person to help you or show up or do anything. It's a really cool, fun thing. If you think about networking as a let me just build my business, you're going to lose. You really need to think about it. How let me build my contacts so I have these relationships to be able to do the cool things that I want down the road. Absolute game changer.
Yeah, you get out of it what you put into it. If you do
Mm,
all the superficial stuff and you just keep it at that level, you're going to get superficial results. You're going to get, some gimme closes down the road. But if you put in some effort and actually try to build good relationships and find the right people to have relationships with, the benefits you get from it are you're not going to be able to put a dollar sign to it.
yeah, for
There's
sure.
going to be so much stuff you get out of it. You're going to be like, wow, networking caused me to do all of this. And I think both you and I can say that the networking piece is really, one of the driving factors for why we're at where we're at right now.
Yeah, agreed. And it's leveraging those connections, those conversations, and allowing us to go bigger and continue to impact the world. So
Mm-hmm.
I would have thought two guys that wanted to get away from networking groups and networking in general built the greatest networking organization on the freaking planet. I mean, it's pretty fucking cool. So, well, guys, we're gonna bail out of this one. Hope you got some tremendous tips and value. If you did, please make sure you subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode out with one person who could get value with this. And as always, love you, mean it. See you, bye.